Sunday morning, right? I mean, it's really nice to see so many people. I personally am so excited every time this show gets more attention. And seeing the way it was received in New York and hearing about how much they're loving it in Miami, it just makes me really understand that the appeal of this project really is intercultural and universal. And that is kind of where I wanted to start talking to you. I definitely want to give you a chance to let everybody know a little bit about your story, which is always important whenever you're going to talk to an artist about their work. But in this particular case, even more salient to the question of how personal for you this was in your own life when it started, and then how quickly it became this truly global thing that it is.
Perfect. Well, thank you. So as you know, I'm Sheinina Raj, and intercultural is not only inspired by ancestral lineage of my own ancestry, but also a reflection of our local communities, national, global. And in my own personal background, it's kind of brought to light for me things that I have faced and how this is relatable across the board to many people. One, I was born in London, but raised in Vancouver, Canada, so facing immigration, being a mixed-race child, so kind of being alienated where I don't necessarily fit into the Hindu culture or the English culture, and ultimately that's why my family left London. My great-great-grandmother in 1891 was, as I think her family would assume, safely playing on the beaches of Goa, and a British soldier approached her and offered her candy, which, she accepted, and then, was like, well, I have more candy for you, follow me. And which she did, and he unfortunately led her to a shipping crate and shipped her to Fiji at 6 years old and made her a slave in the sugarcane fields. And so my great-great-grandfather has a similar experience of being tricked with candy, kidnapped from the shores of Goa. Eventually when the British were returning power to the Fijians, they were granting citizenship to all these sort of children of slaves. And that's when my family were able to board a ship and then, obviously be recognized as British subjects in the UK. Unfortunately, during that time, there was a lot of racism, and my father, unfortunately, during this time of skinheads, really faced, unfortunately, to be very blunt, very severe beatings, group beatings on him because of his color of his skin and his ancestral background, and ultimately decided when I was born that, in his words, there was no hope for me. So hence is why we moved to Vancouver, Canada. And, for me, I just have grown up to realize, you can't run from racism. That's just, it will be there. And I really do hope that intercultural creates a platform for self-reflection, awareness, and, taking these initiative steps for respect for diversity as I enlighten cultural ideologies and create this platform for unity and peace for humanity locally, nationally, and globally.
This work stays this very elegant, beautiful, sort of witty, kind of fine art portraiture. And then very quickly you can just read a little bit about what's going on and realize that there's actually these profound issues going on. And so, for me, that's one of the things I love the most about it, is that it has the political sort of heft to, for example, be at the UN. And yet it has this sort of charm with Nelly Furtado's musical contributions and the brightness and the crispness of the work to be like a lovely gallery show. Tell everybody a little bit the exact thing of which were the very first ones you did and why, because those are the ones that are most closely tied to you. And then what happened that made you realize you wanted to go intercontinental with it?
Well, to be honest, I got the vision for the work, and it was almost like this lightning bolt had hit me, and I was in this vision entering a gallery space, and from there it was clear that I was looking at ancestral clothing. And I remember I had gotten to the sixth piece and had looked up and saw my own face. And even in that vision, in that state, I remember still being somewhat conscious and whipping around the room and seeing my face in every image. And as soon as I connected that vision of it's you in these pictures, it was like whew, this vision was just gone, and I feel like I've hit the ground running. I couldn't help but start with Indian women. That is my background, and that was something I had access to. It's my own outfit. And then I kind of figured out, what I wanted to express, which was peace and unity, and how that could possibly be received. So in every portrait, I actually have the same thought. So that's how you have the consistency in the eyes. The slightest little emotion, whether you're happy, sad, disappointed, whatever that is, it's very slight. And you have to recognize that when a photograph is taken, that's a 60th of a second. So there's no hiding from the camera. It will catch it. So I really kind of realized that what I was thinking was being portrayed, and I had to adjust like my thoughts, and so that was being emanated energetically and visually, and to be captured, and that to be equal amongst all cultures, to share this kind of equal sensibility. I kind of go on this journey prior to that moment. Let's say, like I really dive into the culture, studying it, obviously learning from people who are, native to that culture, whether I'm speaking to someone's grandmother, someone's great aunt, a sister, and really try to understand what this culture represents for them and what their strengths are and what their story is and what their attachment is, and really embody that. So I do meditation prior to the photograph and really embody this woman and honor her and her culture and present her equally powerful to everyone in the world.
The work may seem like it's about right now, but actually this is something you've been at for quite some time.
Yes, and I think...
And it's still growing, right? Like
yes.
It's not ever really... Well, I mean, there's only 197 countries, so at some point it will be done.
The idea is that, you will definitely eventually have this self-reflection, like, oh, I thought this, and all of these thoughts were distinct to that culture, that you realize that a lot of this is within yourself, and it's not necessarily that culture. And again, it gives you an opportunity to be like, wow, and kind of grow as a person. And possibly and hopefully you go out into your community and you maybe treat someone equally or better than you may have before,
Each one kind of has this history in itself, too, where they're heavier than just, like physically, not necessarily emotionally, but they have this kind of center of gravity to them that has to do with the way...
Well, especially the kimono.
Especially, I mean, the kimono, but also, like, the gold embroidery on this one, on Pakistan is outrageous. And so you can't help at that time but think about the fact that it was 99% sure that it was women who made these garments.
And each garment will have a story attached to it. Like, for example, in Morocco, this would actually, the patterns that you're seeing over the breasts would have been tattoos on the face. That embroidered pattern, which actually is essentially a symbolic of warding off evil spirits. So that actually, again, would have been tattooed onto the face, but during the Pan-Arab expansion, it actually became tattooing was now illegal. So they kind of found resolve into now putting this onto their clothes. And then the hand of Fatima, which I find very a beautiful statement to be worn by this culture, because it actually is a physical statement that says, I do not harbor any negative emotions that are due to this sort of animosity towards war-torn relations of our ancestors. So it keeps her sort of very contemporary and kind of making her peace statement, walking around. And the overall adornment is to show how much she's revered by her family and how much respect she has.
There was the sound collaboration that you did for this series, which is what you've been hearing, which is with Nelly Furtado, who is also Canadian and
Yes.
has some of the same ethnic background as you do.
Well, she's Portuguese.
She's
so
Portuguese.
She had discovered Intercultural when it had launched in Toronto, so of course it didn't have the sound aspect at that point. And she had really fallen in love with the Portuguese woman portrait, which isn't here today. And when, she'd actually collected it, so she contacted me after to tell me how inspired she had been. She had been writing music, and she had asked me, had I ever considered putting music to my work, which the answer was yes. And that I had just discovered this new smart sound projection technology. So the sound is actually a quadraphonic, so it's not one piece. They come with the 4 pieces. It's meant for all 4 pieces to play in unison and to really kind of emphasize that message of, peace and unity.
I wanted to ask you a little bit about the synthesis of the adornment and kind of the mapping out of the process of like a piece. A lot of research. I want to hear about a little bit of how you arrive specifically at these outfits and this specific. I mean, obviously
for
you went
Moroccan
through this.
women specifically, because honestly,
just in general, I was asking.
Well, each one has some sort of personal attachment, and each one has its own story as to why I chose it. And you pointed to Moroccan women and how that came about, because my intention was to unite us globally. So, I'd gone far west, let's say, as Hawaii. I'd gone as far east as Japan. I've gone as far south as like Brazil. And, north is my North American women. And the portrait that's still left is I will get myself up to the Yukon Territories to portray the Inuit woman. So, of course, I wanted to definitely refer to Africa. As, if any of us want to honor the truth of humanity, is that we have all evolved from this place in Africa. As humanity kind of migrated, whether they went north, east, west. So I really wanted to include Africa as part of that conversation. So for me, when I'm looking at, and I also wanted it to be believable. So when I looked at the African cultures, to me, the Moroccan woman, we kind of share similar traits. And I felt like I could truly honor that culture and have my intention of bringing Africa into the conversation.
Hey, ladies. I wanted to quote something that Shana said or mentions in her piece on the back of the program. She successively embodies both the epitome and increasing obsolescence of race-based constructs of identity. So my question is about preservation. Were you thinking about cultural preservation as you sort of took these on?
Yes, and I think that this is an opportunity to really, as I go to great lengths to make sure that the ancestors, so I tell everyone, I want to know when your grandmother looks at this. I don't need to, because people will be like, well, what color do you want? Or how do you want to wear it? It's got nothing to do with what I want, my favorite color, what I'm comfortable wearing, or how I feel comfortable. For me, it's more about really truly honoring the culture and the ancestral representation that the outfit represents. And we have a right and maybe a responsibility to honor our ancestral lineage, but we can also embrace who we are today and where this is going,
And how to do that at the same time, and how to have those things not be seemingly oppositional or difficult to coexist in the same person at the same time. Yeah.
First of all, I think there's only one race, and it's human.
Right.
At the end of the day. Second of all, I think that our cultures and our ethnicities should be celebrated and enjoyed by as many people we can. We've got some cool stuff to share,
Yeah.
And then finally, I really see I am an individual and I am all of you.
Yes. You've got it.
You know what I mean?
Yay.
That was good. Exactly. You should get her to go with you to Miami and do the talk with Nellie in Miami. I'm serious. No, that was perfect.
And thank you, everyone, for taking your time today. And I know that it's a Sunday, and I want you to know that I'm honored and I am grateful.